Hello, this is Karan from San Francisco.
And this is Alex from Los Angeles, and welcome to Movies That Shaped Us, a journey of self-discovery through a shared love of film. We're two longtime friends who grew up on opposite ends of the globe with very different backgrounds, but we're both shaped and are still being shaped by the movies we see and love. In each episode, we'll cover a topic around important people, places, events, and moments in our lives, and then explore it through three of our favorite movies. We really hope these movies and topics are fun and revelatory to you, just like they've been to us. So, Karan, we said we talk about important people, places, and events. I think today's a very important person, I guess, that we're talking about. So what's our topic today?
Yeah, our topic today is movies that shaped our relationship with our mothers. So it's Mother's Day around the corner. So this is our Mother's Day episode. I mean, needless to say, I would think that for most people, their mothers in some way or another have played a very important role in their lives, and we are no exception. So maybe I can share a little bit about my relationship with my mom and sort of the framework I use for this episode.
Cool.
And would love to hear from you too, Alex.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. So I feel like my mom and we have a very unique relationship from whatever I see with, friends and other people, which is that my mom and I have sort of been more of best friends. Of course, she's my mother. Of course, she, brought me up and did everything that a great mother would do. But when I think of her, I think our friendship and the fact that we can talk to each other at the same level, support each other, that comes to my mind the first. But yeah, in terms of my mom, she's a very happy-go-lucky person. I feel like everything that I have in my life in terms of appreciating the arts, the fact that we're even doing this podcast, love for movies, love for travel, anything of that sort, I feel like that comes to me from my mom. And growing up, my dad being in the army and sort of being a little bit more cerebral, a little bit more organized and what have you, I sort of used to look up to him for a lot of, how do I find my way in life? But as I've gotten older, I think I tend to appreciate my mom's kind of more lead with kindness, balanced approach to life even more and more. So I don't know. All I'll say is I feel very lucky that I got two parents who complement each other in different ways, and it's been fun to kind of look at both of them in different parts of my life and see what resonates the most. But yeah, with regards to this episode, I wanted to pick movies that I always think of when I think of my mom, because she loves these movies. She loves these kinds of movies. But then there's also kind of a deeper meaning that these movies have had for me, because I see my mom and our relationship through those movies as well, in weird ways. But first and foremost, these are just movies and types of movies that she and I have loved, all our lives. So how about you, Alex?
Cool. So, yeah, for me, I was the first child. My mom,
Me too.
was, we're both eldest sons. My mom, left her career to raise myself and my sisters. So that was always something I admired about her, just dedication to being a mother. Basically, giving all of her time and attention to myself and my siblings. Later, she did end up going back to work when we were a little bit older, and then trying to balance all those things of still, being a full-time mom. At least that's what I felt she was, even though she was also working. So just really was always, to me, someone, my mom, I always admired for being able to juggle all those things, having three kids, but also, being a good wife and then also, working, being a really successful lawyer. So there were a lot of things there that are just inspiring to me as I've been, growing up. But she's always been someone too that I've felt a close relationship with. I can talk to her quite often, can call her with any kind of problem that I have. And she's just been a really good, resource to me in times of need, which is something that I also, identify with mothers and motherhood. So for my movies, I was, starting with just thinking about, what are the movies that are, examples of different moms in powerful ways, but in those ways that reminded me of my own mother. So when I would think of these movies and watch the movies, I'd be like, oh yeah, like this is a mom that I've seen reflected in my own mom, and just in our relationship over the years as well. So yeah, it's going to be fun to go through these lists. Do you want to start with your number 3?
All right. All right. So my number 3 movies that shaped our relationship with our mothers is Dial M for Murder from 1954, directed by Alfred Hitchcock, starring Ray Milland, Grace Kelly, Robert Cummings. One of Hitch's many, many amazing movies. But the reason I put this on my list was our sort of shared love of my mom and I of just murder mysteries. Like we've bonded over this. And frankly, this genre has kind of become more of a family genre. But I think it started really with my mom getting into it. I think a lot of it comes down from the fact that all her life has been a voracious reader, and mystery novels and all kinds of novels were a huge part of her growing up. I always remember growing up, she would finish like 2-3 books in a week, and the Sunday trip to the library to rent the next 8 was always kind of a fun thing, even though I'm sure she regrets that none of this came to me or my sister. We are terrible readers. Don't care. I wish we got that from her. But yeah, I think to me, this movie symbolizes so much of my mom stands for, which is the attention to detail. Just appreciation for that, and kind of paying attention to every nook and cranny of a story. And it's sort of detail in life, but also detail in when you are sharing stories. And that's what this movie is so brilliant at. I think this movie also represents my mom's attitude a little bit, which is that you look at everybody with some sort of humanity and kindness. And that's sort of what Hitchcock is doing in this movie as well, that yeah, bad things are happening, but you look at everybody with some level of kindness and humanity, like I said, but also just gray. There are no, I mean, there are villains for sure out there, but for the most part, people are just trying to figure it out and stumbling along the way and making terrible choices and being selfish when they shouldn't be, and such. So I don't know, that's sort of the deeper meaning that's always struck with me. And my mom stands for that. I try to be better in that area every day, every week. I don't think I haven't been able to match my mom's worldview of kindness. But I always think of that when I think of this movie. But apart from that, I just think this movie is such a banger, right? Like you are trapped in this one apartment pretty much for the entire time, this dense dialogue, a lot of story to unpack, connections of all sorts spanning over time, but you're totally captivated. And very few people can actually do that, but Hitchcock. My memory of this movie is me, my mom, my sister, my dad, all huddled up, watching it for the first time. I want to say about 10 years ago together.
Oh, okay.
I had seen it before, but I hadn't seen it with them. She hadn't seen it at that time either, but it was such a, edge of your seat, pin drop silence.
Yeah.
In fact, I remember my dad maybe put some chips in his mouth and he got yelled at because he was
making too much noise.
Making too much noise with the chips. So yeah, such a great memory of all of us bonding, but especially my mom and I, like really, we talk about Grace Kelly and the dresses and the phone calls and such, randomly since we've watched this movie. I wouldn't put this movie as my top 3 Hitchcock movie. There are others that I prefer, Rebecca or Foreign Correspondent or Vertigo and such. But this is definitely an entertaining one. I don't come back to this movie very often when I'm like doing a repeat of Hitchcock movies. That said, it's amazing, and now this movie is tied to my mind with just my mom's memory.
Oh yeah. So that's cool. I'm also a big Hitchcock fan like you are too, and my opinion on the movie is very similar to what you just said. It's not one of his best, but even his like middling movies are still great. Right. It's Hitchcock.
Exactly.
I saw this movie for the first time actually in a Hitchcock class that I took in college, because it's a known film of his, but it's not one of like the more classic work. So yeah, when I first got into him in high school, this is not one that I had seen. So I got to see it in a theater, which was cool. And actually, this movie was made for 3D, which I've not
Oh,
seen this in 3D. And I remember the teacher kind of apologizing. They were trying to track down a 3D print of the film, but weren't able to get it. And I've always wanted to see this in 3D. That one scene where she's the killer's attempting to kill Grace Kelly, and she's kind of like reaching out over the table she's being thrown on towards the camera. And I'm just, even when I was rewatching it for this podcast, I was like, oh, that must look so interesting in 3D. Like that would be the one scene I feel like would be, Hitchcock using that medium.
I had no idea. Is
Yeah.
that why that some of the very few exterior shots in the movie feel really weird? It almost feels like the outside is sort of being played as like a screen background or recording. And I was like, why, you only have like literally 2 shots outside. You could have just gone out and shot, when like the guy's coming back home, the key mix up and what have you. But it looks like a fake background exterior shot. So, okay, maybe it has something to do with the whole 3D thing.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, because 3D, this movie came out when that craze was actually kind of dying off, and the film was sort of bombing in 3D, and then they had to go and pull all the 3D prints and like put it out there in 2D. So it's actually hard to find in 3D, though sometimes in LA they'll have a screening. I've missed them when they've happened, and I really do want to see this in 3D. But yeah, like my thoughts on this are very similar to yours. Like kind of a lot of edge of your seat stuff, good suspense, kind of locked room in a sense, thriller. The movie was based, I think, on a stage play, so yeah, you can tell because the whole thing is in an apartment. But I think that adds to the suspense of the one location, a couple players in it, and 2, it's not like a big cast, so you're really kind of invested in what's going on with these characters. So yeah, if your mom was into like murder mysteries and things, I think this is a great kind of Hitchcock film that fits into that genre. So I'm not surprised that she liked the movie then when you watched it.
Yeah, this is one of her top 3. I don't know why. Maybe so much of this is also timing, right? When you come to the Hitchcock movies, when you come to the canon of any director, so it could be a little bit of that too. But the last thing I want to say is that I love that she and I can bond on something like this genre, which I don't know how many mothers and kids sort of have. And that sort of speaks to, once again, my mom, I think, where she was not afraid to talk about really anything and everything. And maybe that's why I even feel that kind of friendship sort of relationship with him, because all around me I saw there was kind of like, oh, these are mother and kid topics versus these aren't. I don't think I had much of that. We talked about anything and everything, and that's why even a genre like this is part of our connection, which I don't know most people would be able to say that.
Right, in terms of that genre. Yeah, that's cool. Very cool.
All right, what's your number 3?
Yeah, so my number 3 is The Incredibles. A film came out in 2004, directed by Brad Bird. It's an animated film, Pixar film. The voices of Craig T. Nelson, Holly Hunter, Samuel L. Jackson, and Jason Lee, among others. The IMDb plot summary: a family of undercover superheroes, while trying to live the quiet suburban life, are forced into action to save the world. So this movie is... The mom in this movie, who is voiced by Holly Hunter, is a literal superhero. And I think what this movie does so well with a lot of the family dynamics, but especially at least the mom, and like that was the part that really spoke to me, is it's show that moms can be superheroes in terms of being able to do it all for the family, but at the same time, be a working woman, but also that having superpowers, which the character does in this film, isn't like that makes things easy for her either. Like she still struggles as a mom, even though she has these powers. I think, and that is, again, something for me that growing up, I always viewed my mom like that too. And when I saw this movie, I remember thinking, wow, this is really a great encapsulation of what that type of mom, who again is doing all these different things, trying to take care of all these different kids, and really captures that. And I mentioned again these superheroes, right? And in this film, every superhero has like a different power set. And what I think Brad Bird did so well in this movie is he gave each of the family members a superpower that kind of matched their like where they were in their life or their role within the family. So
Mm-hmm.
the young boy who's like early preteen, he is super fast because like, you know, young boys have all this energy and it's crazy. And, you know, the dad has all this strength because like, you know, typically the father is supposed to carry the weight of the family and like fight for the family. The teenage daughter, you know, goes invisible, as, you know, teenage girls tend to want to do probably, because that's an awkward phase for them. But the mom has elastic powers. So she was
Mm-hmm.
known as Elastigirl. So she can stretch in many directions. And I think that, you know, to me is what reminded me the most of my mom, who, again, is put in these situations where, especially when she started working again, having to be the mom and take care of all these kids who are still growing up. But then, you know, also again go to work, take care of the house, all these things, is kind of stretching herself in all these different ways. And it's not easy either, you know, even though I would view as a kid like, oh, this is easy, like you're doing all this, but really it's not. And I think this movie does a really good job with that. There's, you know, a scene where she's trying to keep all the kids kind of at dinner, to like sitting down eating their food, typically stuff moms will kind of say, and she's, you know, literally stretching all around that room to try to keep everything in place. So moms, even though they don't have superpowers, this is something that they do all the time, especially with like large families, which, you know, having 3 kids, I think is, you know, on the larger side. Yeah. So there's a lot that my mom had to do as well. But, you know, there are moments in this film too where she has doubts that about herself, and can she do this? Can she go back? You know, in the film, there's a moment where it's, again, they have to kind of be dragged out of retirement and become superheroes again. And she's sort of questioning, like, do I still have this in me? Can I still be the Elastigirl that I was? And needs a little bit of a pep talk from one of the other characters. You know, and I think this is something too that, you know, moms have moments of doubt sometimes. Mm-hmm. It's a lot that they have responsibility for. And I thought this did a really good job, that scene of just encapsulating what you know, Helen, who's Elastigirl, what she was kind of going through of these doubts that I'm sure, you know, I'm not a mom obviously, but I'm sure that they you know, they have these moments of doubts, but then they still pull it off in the end. They're still able to be that superhero. So, you know, I think this movie to me first of all, it's a great film too. Mm-hmm. It's just a fantastic, one of Pixar's best films, I think. Great take on both the superhero genre, but also 60s Bond films, a little influenced by both of those. But the reason why I put this on the list is I do remember like seeing this for the first time, being like, oh yeah, like it's like that is how I always viewed my mom growing up, and still do today, in terms of what, you know, she's able to do for everyone, even in retirement. So I just had to put this movie on the list. It's fantastic.
I love it. Yeah, I'm so glad you put this. And I actually had not seen this movie before, maybe in bits and pieces, but I saw it for today's episode. And I was just blown away by how incredible this movie is in all departments, really. It's just so clever, holds up. I think the thing that I was left with is, I wanted more of the mom character in the movie, because she steals the show completely. And it's such a brilliant voice performance by Holly Hunter.
Oh, incredible.
I think she's just amazing. I wish we saw more of her.
Yeah.
She just, whatever she's done, she's been good at.
Her first voice role, I might add. She had not done voiceover work. And just, I think she's one of the best voiceover performances in a film I've seen, for sure.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
So
no pun intended.
Maybe that's just of the movie that you want to see more of a character. It's not that she's not there, but you know, for the first half of the movie, the dad is sort of the main protagonist and sort of moving the plot forward and such, which maybe is emblematic of the time in which the story is set as well, in terms of family dynamics and the roles people play and such. But this is really her movie. And that was really, really cool to watch. Everything you said really resonated with me as well. And I don't know, it was also fun to see, to me, like you were saying, like the doubts and the challenges that the mom character has, like that to me is sort of the core of the movie. You know, if you remove that, it's still a very good movie, but it wouldn't hit the way this movie does, where she's questioning her relationship with her husband, questioning, you know, going back to work, questioning, looking at the kids who she loves, but is also frustrated and irritated by them. It's a very real portrayal of an actual human being, you know, trying to kind of juggle all of that, which is what moms do on a daily basis, like you said. So yeah, really, really good pick, and I'm glad I watched it.
Yeah, totally. And the sequel actually, which is not as good. Incredibles is much better than Incredibles
Yeah.
2, but Incredibles 2, I feel that they give I don't know if you've seen that film yet.
No,
but
I want to now.
they give the mom more, like she's more of the center character actually in the entire film. I think they realized they had something special in that character with the first movie. So when they decided to go back and do the sequel, I feel like it was almost 10 years later, something like that, 8 years later, they made the sequel. The mom's character, Elastigirl, is much more of the main focus of the film. And I almost put that one on here, but I think having the first Incredibles is a better encapsulation of that just across the whole family. So I'm glad you saw it and enjoyed it. Yeah, one of the better, maybe even the best in my, or at least my favorite, maybe Pixar film. I think they just did a great job with this.
Oh, wow.
Cool. So what's your number 2?
All right. So my number 2 is Howard's End from 1992, directed by James Ivory, starring Anthony Hopkins, Emma Thompson, Vanessa Redgrave, Helena Bonham Carter. Quick log line: a businessman thwarts his wife's bequest of an estate to another woman. Not how I would describe this movie, but sure. But this
very
movie,
odd log line there. Yeah. Interesting.
Sure.
Yeah.
This movie is on my list because this movie symbolizes my and my mom's shared love of British countryside and culture. Like, that's how we even got to this movie. Like, we love British series and such that we've talked about on this podcast before, whether it's, the comedy shows, but also Jane Austen, all of that. I feel like I owe my appreciation to that through my mom. And I think this movie is kind of at the top of the peak of that love. But I think as I watched this movie over and over again, with her, but also on my own, I think it started to have a much deeper resonance and significance for me, especially as I view my mom. Several themes. So the importance of home and a house. I don't think I've shared this on the podcast before, or maybe I have, but I grew up as an army brat. So we moved a lot. We didn't really have a home that we grew up in, but there was one house in a city in India called Hyderabad where we were there for quite a bit. And at that time, we had this 200-year-old British bungalow that we lived in that had fruit orchards and tennis courts and such all in its compound. It was this kind of long home, horizontal. So instead of kind of the railway style homes in San Francisco, this was the opposite. So room after room after room. And I don't know, there's something about that place where we were in our lives. I think I was in grade 3 or 4 or something like that. We moved there. And so I don't know, whenever I think about this movie, I always think about that home and coming back to it and our attachment, because we grew up there, the grounds, playing around. And, I think I was old enough to appreciate what this place meant to me, and also kind of, forming a deeper bond with my mom, playing games, playing badminton and all sorts of things, helping her out in the kitchen. Like, so much of our common interest started to take shape in this home. So that's one big sort of theme. The other theme is just Emma Thompson's character, who is not a mother in the movie, but I think she is a bit of a mother figure to her siblings. And it's a character, but also Emma Thompson's amazing Oscar-winning performance, where she's striking this balance between gentle strength, but making people happy all around her, but at the same time standing up for herself, holding her own people accountable, like Helena Bonham Carter, who's spinning out of control, but also championing them. Knowing what she needs for herself and her family, because we're talking about times where women didn't have that much agency, but at the same time, she is standing true to herself and not, putting up with anything and everything that Anthony Hopkins' character asks her to put up with. So it's just such a delicate, balanced performance, but also the balance the character strikes. And I view my mom that way a lot. Like, she had like a pseudo arranged marriage. Like, she met my dad before they got married, and they liked each other, they fell in love and what have you. And then they got married, but they were, hitched or introduced to each other through family connections. So it's sort of a pseudo arranged marriage. And she came into this home, and it's been brilliant for me and my sister to watch how she kind of made this whole new family her own family. And I'm sure that wasn't always easy, but I always think of my mom kind of striking all these different balances of pleasing the in-laws and her husband while standing up for herself, holding us accountable, giving us shit, but at the same time championing us. So there's so much of that, but doing it with a smile, doing it in a way that, I don't know, to me feels like the most effective way of navigating all of this stuff in life. And she sort of nailed that. And then on a lighter note, I think this movie symbolizes a lot of the finer appreciation for finer things in life, right? Like I whether it's like good tea and snacks and sitting around in kind of beautiful living rooms and enjoying the afternoon or what have you. I have so many of such memories with my mom and my sister, kind of just, having good tea and snacks in the afternoons. So yeah, there's all of that, which is why I love this movie and has so much great significance to me. And then as a pure movie, I'm a big Merchant Ivory production fan, but I think this is probably one of their best, if not the best. We talk about mise-en-scène a lot on this podcast. This is like amazing in every department. It is a period piece, but to me, it feels very contemporary. It feels very human and real. It doesn't feel stodgy or stuffy, which I feel like a lot of people, the moment they hear the name or anything to do with a movie like this, they're probably just tuned off. And I would highly encourage people to just watch it and give it a chance. And then the last thing I would say is that the way the movie breathes and how it gets under your skin, like when the movie starts, you don't even know what's happening. Like, what is Vanessa Redgrave? Why are they coming to the city? Why are they forming this kind of weird bond between Emma Thompson and Vanessa Redgrave? What is Howard's End? What is this house? Why are we seeing these blue flower fields? What is happening? Like, it took me a little bit, but by the 3/4 point in the movie is made home in your heart and your mind. You're sort of with these people. And I think that is just such a brilliant way of storytelling, and not many people can pull off and yet sort of hold your attention. So yeah, that's Howard's End.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely glad you put this on the list. I had not seen this movie before. I'd seen a couple of Merchant Ivory movies. Not that I didn't like them, but they were good. But I haven't like gone back and tried to go over their whole filmography and kind of dive deep. And this, I think, is the best one that I've seen. I really enjoyed this movie. I think it's interesting you say that about like the beginning, sort of not really know what's going on, because I was watching this movie and I was thinking this is one of the things I think that they do a very good job of, because most of their films, if not all, again, I'm not super familiar with their filmography, are literary adaptations, which I think is a hard thing to do, to capture like what it's like to read a book in a film and make it feel filmatic as well and cinematic. Yeah. And I think this, to me, was just a incredible example of it. Not that I've read the book of Howard's End, but I felt like I was reading the book, but not in a negative way, in a way that was like, oh, it's just like the pacing of it. Even that, like you just described, sometimes when you're reading a book, especially like a long novel, you're kind of like lost or not connected with things. In the first couple chapters, it's kind of setting the scene. And then halfway through the book, it turns into the page turner. This movie was a lot like that too. Cause I'm like, okay, what's going on? There's so many characters. But then an hour in or whatever, you're like super invested. And then you really care about what's going on and you understand the world. It's like that pace that I think is just a lot like reading a novel. And man, like the production design was just incredible. Like the attention to detail in every shot of every set that they were in, all the different settings, you felt like you were transported into this time and this place. In a way that is also sometimes hard to pull off, especially with literary adaptations. So that was just I was very, very impressed. And then in terms of the themes, I think, you hit on that around the theme of like the house being important. And, Vanessa Redgrave's character was so focused on like her legacy, because she's, she's dying in the film as she's very old. And the house to her like represented that legacy, and what a house and a physical embodiment of like a family's history in the past, but then also like making sure that if you keep that house in the family or make sure that a house still stands and is still there, that that's somehow your legacy after you pass on, just which is something, you know, that mothers and just people too are very concerned about, and how they're you know, their legacy through their kids, or how you're teaching all the lessons that you learned as a woman to your children, so that they can kind of carry on those values and those things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was definitely a very important theme that I took away from this film, that I think fits in a lot with what you were describing too, just with your mom and your family living in the house, where like the memories are so attached to a place. And that was very important to you. And I think that is something that comes through in this film very clearly, and which is a very, you know, just interesting kind of take on, again, a legacy and what you're leaving behind, and how embodying, you know, houses can play an important part of that. But yeah, I really enjoyed this movie a lot. Definitely glad I saw it, and recommend, you know, folks, like you were saying, Karan, if people think, oh, it's maybe a little stodgy or staid or something. No, this movie I thought was really like full of life from the beginning, and just fantastic. Anthony Hopkins is really good at it too.
Mm-hmm.
I think he does a very good job of playing kind of like not such a great character, but
with so much complexity and layers.
Totally. Oh yeah,
yeah.
no. I mean like great character in terms of like the guy's not a good guy. I didn't mean in terms of the character's rich. Yeah, but the person's not like, he's, you know, he's kind of strict and traditionalist and judgmental and all these things. But yeah, he does bring a dimensionality to that performance, and just just really enjoyed the film.
I'm so glad you did. In fact, when you were talking about the legacy of the home, it just made me think of another thing, which is that even though Vanessa Redgrave is the one that has the beautiful home, I don't think she's had a very happy life.
Right.
Versus these people who relatively, Emma Thompson's and her siblings, they don't come from that much money.
Mm-mm.
They're about to lose their home. They don't have much, but they seem so happy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the part that I always think of. And maybe I didn't do a great job talking about it earlier, but those scenes of all of them enjoying each other, the teas and the snacks and such. I think the meta commentary being made in the movie also is that, yeah, legacy and physical things do matter, but ultimately what matters more is the relationship and the love that you have. So even though these people don't have a whole lot, they are the true family, and hence the difference between a home and a house.
Right.
Howard's End is not a home earlier. It's just a house. And it's much later, when through all these weird trials and tribulations, when it finally comes back to Emma Thompson, I think that's when it probably becomes home again. But the point is that you don't need a house to make a home.
Right.
And I connect with that because, yeah, we lived in this beautiful British bungalow, but that was only for 2.5 years. After that, we were moving up and down. We didn't even have, you know, a constant home to call it home. But it didn't matter because the four of us were together. And we had our teas and cakes and snacks and had a good time and supported each other. So ultimately, that's what matters more.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think that movie this movie captures that for sure.
Yeah. What's your number two?
So my number two film is Aliens from 1986. So this
what
is
a contrast.
I know, yeah.
Practically the same movie.
Basically, yeah, exactly. Directed by James Cameron, starring Sigourney Weaver, Michael Biehn, Lance Henriksen, and Bill Paxton. The IMDb summary, 57 years after surviving an apocalyptic attack aboard her space vessel by merciless space creatures, Officer Ripley awakens from hypersleep and tries to warn anyone who will listen about the predators. Not a bad summary, I guess.
No.
So this film, it was hard actually not putting this in number one. I feel that this movie, more than any film I've ever seen, really captures like an on-screen depiction of the strength of motherhood, and is really about mothers more than any film I think that has been made, or at least that I've connected with. And for me, like that motherhood is seen as a strength, which is something that so often in films when depicting female traits that are like, we're trying to make a female character a strong character. Sometimes they basically just assign them typically male strength characteristics. And what I think this movie does such a great job is it takes something that men cannot be. Men can't be mothers. Women are mothers. That's a uniquely feminine thing, and they're using that as a strength through Ripley's character, which this movie is really all about. Her journey as she was a mom. She loses her daughter because she gets put in hypersleep for too long, so her daughter's dead when she wakes up. And she's dealing with that loss, and then has to become a mother again, a surrogate mother, through a colonist's daughter they find on this planet where they're going to investigate whether aliens are there or not, and then becomes a mom again through that. And to me, like, again, I view motherhood as a strength. I definitely was looking up to my mom and when growing up, and whenever she would exemplify, typically mom traits of caring, protection, I would see those as strengths and things that, again, I would idolize those things about my mom. And I think, again, that this movie just does such a great job with doing that. Like I said, Ripley finds this daughter, or this child, her name Newt, on this compound. She's trying to get over PSD, Ripley is, from her alien attack from the first Alien movie. So this is a sequel to that film. But she's able to power through it only when she then has this job of taking care of Newt. So she is the one who, throughout the entire film, actually, once she finds this child on this colony, all the other colonists are dead. There's all these aliens there. She's been brought in as the alien expert, and she's there, giving advice a little bit, but she's a little afraid too, and isn't really taking charge of the situation. The Colonial Marines are there, they're kind of running the show. But it's once she finds this child and has a mission now for this film of protecting this child, basically being the mother to this child throughout the film, then all of a sudden she has agency. She becomes the main character. She's the hero. She's driving the plot forward now because she has this need to protect this girl as a mother. That's, again, a very a motherly need that she's able to have there. And the ending, I think, really encapsulates this a lot as well. When so, like I said, Ripley's a surrogate mother, and at the end of the movie, we meet the alien queen. So essentially, you have the alien mother versus the human mother, and you contrasting these two different types of motherhood. So the alien queen is there basically just laying eggs all over the place. So it is a very scientific definition of a mother. She's procreating, she's laying the eggs. She's serving that role, and it's a very cut and dry. Are you a mom? Oh yeah, because I had a baby. Then I'm a mother because I'm reproducing. Whereas Ripley, this isn't even her biological child, but she's trying to protect that child and fight against the aliens so that she can save this child. So that is a motherhood not defined by biology or a textbook definition of a mother. Mm-hmm. Those are all the other things that come inclusive of what motherhood really is, which is protecting your child at all costs. And I think even you'll see scenes in the film where Ripley's protecting Newt, but then as the other aliens, the grown-up aliens, are getting killed, you don't really see the alien queen responding too much. She gets mad when her eggs are set on fire because the eggs haven't hatched yet. And once the eggs hatch, she doesn't care. It's just another alien to her. That doesn't matter to her, but to Ripley, it would. It matters so much so that, again, this isn't even her child she's protecting. And when you see those two versions of motherhood there fighting at the end, I think it's really just saying that, defining motherhood is greater than just having a child. There's all these other things that come along with it about protecting that child, defending that child to the end. And that's something I always felt from my mom too, that she would also fight an alien queen for me. And I think too, this whole kind of arc that Ripley goes through really does cap at the end of the film, when at the very, very end, when all the aliens defeated, and it's just now she has succeeded in saving Newt. Now the threat is gone. Newt does refer to her as mom at the very end, which really just, again, puts a bow on that of now she's the mother. She's demonstrated that she's protecting this child. And it's a really touching moment at the end of this film. And so I almost put this as number one for me, because I can't think of another film that is about mothers more than this one. Plus, often, or not very often on this podcast yet, at least, we've talked through a movie that I just feel as a film is literally perfect, a 10 out of 10 out of 10 out of 10, masterpiece. I see this movie and I'm just in awe of its power. Is just one of the most perfect films ever made. So it's nice just to bring that up. Sigourney Weaver, incredible job in this movie. She actually got an Oscar nomination for her performance in this, which I think, I haven't seen the Marlee Matlin film that won her the Oscar, so maybe she did do a better job. But I think the performance Sigourney puts in this, just again as a mom who's fighting through PTSD, but then has to then fill in this mother role against what, even putting herself in danger. Right? It's just incredible performance. And yeah, just had to bring aliens into this conversation.
Now, this is a masterpiece, no question. Agree with everything you were saying, but I would just add to that when I think of this movie, I also just think of how badass Sigourney Weaver is in the movie.
Yeah, right.
Which is also something that you often don't see in a way that just feels, I don't know, very authentic.
Mm-hmm.
And because it didn't feel like to me that, oh, we're going to make, like you were saying, a strong female lead character, so let's make her badass, which also is fine. Nothing wrong in that. Of course, the world can see more badass women being portrayed on screen. That's great. But I think why this movie is a masterpiece is because of what you were saying, like her motivations and her arc and where she's coming from. But she also has the physicality and the will and the presence of mind and all the great characteristics that you need to be a soldier in her as well. And they are married together in a beautiful way. Not that, there are plenty of movies out there where men are just like, destroying half of the world with barely any personal connection or any real motivation. Right. So it would have been fine if it were just that. But I just think this movie is so much deeper because of all its connections. And then like you said, it's just brilliantly made. Ridley Scott, I mean, what can one say? He just keeps at it.
Well, this is Cameron. Scott was
the first one. Yeah. The second one is Ridley Scott.
No, first one's Ridley Scott.
First one is Ridley Scott.
Yeah. This is But yeah, Ridley Scott's awesome too. Shout out to him and the first Alien film. But I think Cameron, this might be his masterpiece. I mean, he's made so many masterpieces. It's tough to say, but yeah, like Jim Cameron, who also does a very great job with his portrayal of mothers. That's a constant theme actually through his entire filmography. Yeah. He's not really talked too much about his own relationship with his mother, but clearly it was a very important one in his life because you see motherhood reflected in very unique ways and always seen as strengths in a lot of his female characters, which are usually his center characters throughout all of his films. And actually his new film, the Avatar 2 that's coming out this year, is about family. And now the couple, Neytiri, has a child. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of his mom in that film as well too. But I think you Brian undertook a new point too around just the soldier aspect of it too, which I think is an interesting juxtaposition as well, between the masculinity displayed through the military in this film and even then Paul Reiser in terms of ruthless businessmen and the capitalist system. And Ripley has to fight against both of those and actually is the victor in the end. Like her power as a mom, like that wins out over all these other forms of these other actors are, parts in the film that are not able to protect Newt. Like the military's not doing it. The company doesn't care. Like Ripley's the one that's doing that because, she was a mom, and wants to be again. So yeah, I can't, it's like one of those movies that ends and I just watch it again because it's so good. It's just incredible, but, cool. So it looks like we're moving on to number ones. What is your number one?
Yeah. Couldn't be picking a different movie, which I love. But my number one is The Out of Towners from 1999, starring Steve Martin, Goldie Hawn, directed by Sam Weisman. The quick log line: the remake of the 1970s Neil Simon comedy follows the adventures of married couple Henry and Nancy Clark as they are vexed by misfortune while in New York City for a job interview. So this is a silly movie in many, many ways. It's, I put this movie as my number one for what I said earlier, which is that my mom is a laugh out loud person. When I think of my mom, that's what I think of the first, which is she is able to crack up and see the lighter side of life. She is the one sitting in movie theaters laughing out loud where people staring at us and me and my sister kind of junking in our chairs that nope, not with her. And I could have put any Steve Martin movie, but there are few people in our household which are sort of in that hall of fame, if you will, of people who can make my mom laugh and really all of us laugh. I think Steve Martin is in there, and Goldie Hawn is sort of in that company as well. So that's why this movie is in there. But I think, as I've like with Howard Zen, as I watched this movie over and over again, initially the entry point was just the fact that it's funny and it's Steve Martin. But I think as I watched it over and over again, it's really been, to me, striking to note that this is really a Goldie Hawn movie.
Yeah.
And it is this movie of a woman, and we've been talking a lot about strength of a woman and a strength of a mom. And I think this movie once again shows that in a very different way, where, you know, she has a lot of agency, and she, even though is sad because she's an empty nester and her kids have moved out, she wants to reclaim life, and she has this verve and zeal for living life, you know, large, versus her husband has sort of he's been left behind a little bit. He's caught in the rut, doesn't really know what to do with himself or with the two of them. And so much of this movie is about Goldie Hawn taking charge for herself, but then ultimately for their marriage as well. And I see my mom in her a lot, where on the surface, if somebody met my mom, of course, they would be struck by, you know, her personality, her beauty, her fun-loving nature, her, you know, intellect and such, but they may not realize how strong and determined and willed she is. And I think that's sort of what I see in Goldie Hawn as well. Like, if you met her, she might come across that, oh, he's like a fun-loving, you know, cute person. But there's so much more going on beneath the surface, and you see that on display. Like, Goldie Hawn is up to heroics in this movie, has like a fearless kind of attitude towards her, while Steve Martin is second guessing himself all the time, even though he's coming from a place of being more organized and doing the right thing, being more adult. And someone might say that Goldie is probably being a little bit childlike, but I think that's sort of the beauty of life sometimes, that the childlike wonder and kind of just going for it is actually what being strong is sometimes. And you need to be that way. You can't just succumb to the plan all the time and, you know, knowing all the time what life should have been. You have to take chances. You have to kind of grab life where you meet it at. And I think that's what she does. And I think my mom is very much like that. But all that aside, it's a very funny movie. Their chemistry is amazing. It's a great New York movie. I just think the plot is so great, like a simple one-liner plot, but you can throw so much at it. There's a lot in there that probably could be tighter and, you know, could be even funnier, but I'm willing to overlook all of that. It's a great movie to rewatch on any night, really. So if people haven't watched this movie, I highly encourage it. And I actually find it better than the original movie. But that's just me.
Cool. Yeah, I've never seen the original movie before, though I'm a big Neil Simon fan. Just had not seen it. Actually, this is a movie too that I had not seen. I remembered when it came out, it was very poorly reviewed and it bombed really badly. So I remember being like, uh-oh, is this good? Not good for Steve Martin, who was a huge fan of Steve Martin. So I kind of avoided the movie. And then every time I would see it, I'd be like, oh yeah, that was that movie that was poorly reviewed and kind of bombed. But I have to say, I liked it. I don't know why it was very like attacked by the critics. Like it's fun and enjoyable, and like Steve Martin's great in it. John Cleese, who's basically doing a Faulty Towers throwback kind of thing, was really fun in it. And Goldie Hawn, who I agree with you actually, that she really is kind of the main character, and it's kind of her story of a mom who, but this is what and also because we were watching this for the Mother's Day, I was very, closely paid attention to like the mom themes. But I think the strongest part of this film is her arc she's an empty nester. She defined herself once she had kids by the fact that she was a mom. She was working with Steve Martin, and then she like left their business to raise their kids. Now the kids are off at college and gone, and she's like, well, now what my life is meaningless. I have nothing to do. What am I supposed to do? And then she struggles with that through the entire film. And at least what I got away from the end of the movie was, once she realized that because she needed to be needed by the kids, right? She was even doing some things on the side of like helping them out in ways that like giving them the credit card, and Steve Martin was mad. Why? Oh, I just want to help my kids and, you know, be needed for them. But when she realized at the end of the movie that Steve Martin basically needs her, like he is a total, like he's kind of a child at the end. He can't,
Yeah.
He literally, there's a scene where she's like dressing him, like he can't take care of him. He can't do the big, like the big meeting or whatever. And I feel like that at the end of this movie, when she realized, oh, like I can be basically a mom to my husband, and he's kind of the kid, and I can now fulfill myself as a mother with my own husband in a way. Like then she's is satisfied and is then excited about what her life can take in this new stage. But I felt this movie was fun. I wish I had seen it back when it came out, just because I think I would have enjoyed it back then. The only part that aged really poorly was Rudy Giuliani shows up. So trigger warning for that. Yeah. I almost like passed out when I saw it. It's so disgusting. But beyond that, I recommend this movie for people like me that remember this being a notorious bomb and a flop. Check it out. It's funny. It's good.
Really fun.
It's fun.
Yeah, I didn't take that away from it. I mean, maybe that's the part of it that she can take care of him, but that's not a sole agency. I sort of think that this person, as in Goldie Hawn's character, I don't think she ever had the time or the agency to kind of fully explore what life has to offer. And I think this trip really brought out her, like I was saying earlier, her verve and a zeal for life. And the fact that she is probably been playing by the books so far, just doing what you have to do as a mother and such. But I think she unlocked something in herself, that she is a risk taker and she wants to try different things and have fun in life. So I think to me, that's the big takeaway. So my wish for her is that I hope she goes on many such trips, solo or with her husband or with her friends, maybe finds a new career, which she does have a career by the end of the movie. But
right.
My hope is that she maybe takes over at that business where she's just playing probably second fiddle to her husband. Maybe she becomes the primary, or quits that and does something else, because she just has more to offer, which I think so much of that part gets lost in our societies, because being a mom is the biggest and toughest job you can possibly have.
Right.
But there's so much more that often there isn't much time for moms to explore. So I just love that you get to see that in this movie, that she got to explore that. And I just think Goldie Hawn is just so brilliant at it. Like there are not many people who can play that kind of effortlessness with intelligence. Effortlessness and fun is often ditzy and silly.
Right.
But she's anything but silly. I don't think we have a person or ever had an actress like that before. So such a fan.
Yeah, she does a great job in the film. Definitely. Again, the people that stayed away from it for the same reasons I was avoiding it, check it out. I think you'll enjoy it.
All right. What's your number one?
So my number one is Dumbo from 1941, directed by Ben Sharpstein. IMDb plot summary: ridiculed because of his enormous ears, a young circus elephant is assisted by a mouse to achieve his full potential. So this is a Disney animated film from 40s, one of their earlier works. Very short. I think it's like an hour and 2 minutes or something. But this movie is my number one because it really captures not only like a mother's unconditional love for her kid, actually her son in this film, but also that moms typically, or at least you feel that as a child from your mom, that they love you unconditionally no matter what. They love you despite your flaws, and that can actually motivate you to be the best person you can be, and your mom can be an inspiration to you, so you can achieve your greatest potential. So that to me are all things that I felt from my mom growing up. She definitely was an inspiration to me, always supportive of everything that I wanted to do. And in this film too, like the plot summary mentioned, Dumbo is a baby elephant who's mocked throughout this film of having large ears. There's even a scene very early on in the movie where some people are like kind of physically harassing Dumbo, and makes the mom so mad that she attacks and protects the child. And then she gets taken away because they think she's just a crazy elephant, and locked up and separated from her son, which is a really hard thing, in this movie. That's a really hard scene to see. It's really sad.
Oh gosh, can never make it through that.
Yeah,
Really.
it's really sad when Mrs. Jumbo gets the baby taken away, but it shows how much she loves her son, and that it's really through that inspiration that Dumbo is able to realize his hidden talent of this flaw that everyone thinks is, he's a freak because he has gigantic ears as an elephant, even though the mom loved him anyway. But actually, like, he can fly, which is he again finds his strength and his uniqueness. That is, again, his mother inspires him to do this. She was always supportive of him, and in the end of the film, which is a really cool, like, now he's super famous, he's successful as a circus elephant, and he ends up getting his mom like a little car on the train, which is just, again, giving back to your mom.
So
and
cute.
Yeah, like, I always loved this movie as a kid. I saw it like very, very young, and just as I'm always one of my favorite Disney films. And growing up really does, mean a lot, even more to me, as I can see how all the different ways my mom has inspired me and supported me in all the, the success or the limited success or whatever that I've had. I definitely credit a lot of that to my mom's support. And too, like, as I was thinking about a lot of these movies, it was hard for me to find movies where it was a mother-son relationship that wasn't something toxic and terrible. Like a Psycho, where, like, a mother and a son, it's usually like the mother's horrible and the son goes crazy because of the horrible mother. This is a movie that was, I literally couldn't, think of any other ones off the top of my head where that relationship was actually a strength. It's usually like mother-daughter or father-son. Having a mother-son movie that spoke about the power and the positivity of that relationship, which I definitely feel like I had a positive relationship with my mom. I think this movie is one of the few, or the only one I could think of. Maybe there are other ones out there, but that is really just so much about that. So I really do. This movie is still just, means a lot to me. I really enjoy watching. It's an easy watch because it's only about an hour. And definitely, if folks haven't seen this, I would highly recommend watching this movie, even though, the part when Dumbo's mom gets taken away is really sad. I definitely cry every time I see that, but it's a happy ending. He gets through the train car at the end, so it all works out.
Yeah, that part is pretty excruciating.
Yeah,
I have a question for you, and by the way, I agree with everything you said. Fantastic pick. Happy to see it on the list. What was your version of large ears growing up that you think your mom unconditionally championed?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I mean, I don't think it was necessarily like anything physical,
No,
but it was definitely like, I had a very
I didn't mean that.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I'm just thinking of your question. Yeah, it definitely wasn't like some sort of a physical thing I had to overcome, but definitely, I was interested in a lot of passions on computers and then film, and they're two things that weren't like typical of at least in Boston where I was growing up, like that. Those weren't, I was the kid who liked technology and or movies. There wasn't a lot of us there. And my mom was definitely, sent me to computer camp as a kid, made sure to encourage, me making movies with my sisters, and taking me to movies, and, my birthday and things like that, taking me out of school and we go to the movies and things. So she'd be supportive of these, unique interests of mine that developed into, factoring into my career, and me moving to California and all these different things, and just having that support of not kind of being, oh, well, these are the more traditional things that you have to get into, or, oh, you should be interested in like math or whatever. I mean, not that she was encouraging me to be good in school too, but it wasn't like I was being forced into some box. So definitely, I think a lot of my interests were supported by my mom, which I think, again, this movie does a good job of, sort of like anything you can do. There's something I always felt from both my parents too, but like, oh, the world is kind of your oyster. You'll succeed in anything you try at, like those sort of things. Right. Helped me kind of take risks in my career and in my life and take chances. Like, I can, sometimes I do fail, I always, succeed at everything, but if your mom believes that you can, then at least you try, which is that strength that you can get from a mom. And I think this movie does a good job with that.
Totally. No, that support and encouragement and sort of undying belief, even though they themselves might be faking it at times.
Right. Of course. I'm sure. Yeah.
Goes a long way. I can't tell you how many things I've jumped into only because I, got a little bit of an encouragement or what have you from them. So that's a really, really good one.
Yeah. Cool. Any didn't make it on your list?
Sort of similar movies like I could have honestly put any Steve Martin movie in here. But I think as I shuffled through the list, like because of all the reasons we talked about, that Goldie Hawn and everything, that I think this movie kind of stood the test of time in my list. I would also say First Wives Club, another Goldie Hawn picture, which I almost put in here as well. But yeah, that would be it. How about you?
Yeah, for me, it was basically this list. I mean, the only other one that I think could have made it in there was Terminator 2, just another Cameron movie that's a lot about motherhood. That I think is another fascinating portrayal of other parts of being a mom. But I identified a lot more, at least with my relationship with my mom, in terms of viewing her more as a Ripley than as a Sarah Connor character. So I put Aliens on there. So yeah, I think this was really fun. I hopefully and listeners enjoyed this as well. And
I
great.
hope so too.
Yeah.
And I feel like we kind of touched on many different themes of motherhood, all the way from strength and just gentle strength and vulnerability and the confusions and the doubts and how hard this job is, because you literally have the weight of the whole world on your shoulders when you're doing it. So I feel good that we touch many aspects of that.
Yeah, me too. It was a good eclectic group of films too. I thought that was
also
was very cool.
Very different movies.
That. Yeah, which I like that, but they're all expressing something similar in terms of those themes. So it was fun. I enjoyed this discussion. Cool. So yeah, thanks. Thank you all for listening. Hope you enjoyed the discussion, learned something about yourself, a little more about us and our moms. Please make sure to rate, subscribe on give us reviews on all your favorite podcast platforms. Tell folks about us too. We're definitely trying to grow our listenership. So really appreciate that. And hope to all the moms out there, happy Mother's Day. To my mom, hey mom, love you. Happy Mother's Day.
My mom as well, and those who are listening, call your mothers.
Yes. Great. Well, until next time, Karan, I'll talk to you later.
Bye. Thank you.